But just to expand on that Nolan thing, when it comes to Tenet, I saw the first trailer. I didn't really get it. I don't know what to think. Like, I don't get the film, and I think that's what a trailer should do. It's like not be too, you know, like either like you make it short and sweet. Like teasers can be mysterious, you know. But this was like an actual trailer that, you know, at the end I was just like, I don't really get it. It's it's kind of like cliched. It's again like a guy in a suit navigating through time or space or whatever, and the whole movie is like a cold color palette because Nolan, I don't know if you guys know this, has color blindness, so that's why his movies are very blue and white and black. It's pretty interesting. That's really cool, actually, to take your disability and like really work around it in a really like cool filmmaking way. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, him and I was saying Nicholas Winding Refn's another one who's colorblind, which is why his
Oh yeah,
films
that's
are
right.
so insanely high contrast. You know, if you look at One Frame of Only God Forgives, you're like, whoa, what is that? But yeah, I agree. He is, for me, I really like Christopher Nolan, but I'm fully aware of the criticisms he has. Nolan has a crowd-pleasing edge to him. Nolan's a showman as much as he is an intellectual, and that to me hurts him sometimes. And that's why I don't like Interstellar, you know? Because I feel like...
We've actually talked about this before, Fareed, but like, well, not on this show, but like, my main issue with Christopher Nolan films is like, besides The Dark Knight, which when they go into themes of fear or morality, it's much more like, okay, you don't have to introduce that. But when it comes to concepts such as dreams or time travel, he has to introduce this concept from the beginning. And me, someone who already studies a bit of this, picks up a bit on this, it's you don't want to go through a whole hour of him explaining the stuff before you can really explore it. So that always weighs down the beginning for me. Like
understandable, yeah. I mean, it depends on how much you're locked into that idea. They're very concept driven, but that's what I was saying. Like, Toby, you nailed it. Like, Kubrick was able to deflect that because he was very like he was very thematic as a filmmaker. He wasn't giving you like super sentimental stuff, but he was always all about humanity and like thinking about us as people.
Also, I found the image that you say looks like a dick.
Yeah. I see it. I mean, okay, it kind of looks like a dick.
I don't know. But here's the thing. Bernard, do you see it? I put it in the group chat.
Hold on. Let's see. This is crucial. Absolutely.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like,
Thank you.
I mean, I can,
Thank
especially
you.
that circle at the beginning
sorry,
definitely doesn't.
I didn't mean like I know what you mean, Fareed. I meant like I've seen that picture
Oh
before.
God,
but
come
like,
on.
it's not a.
The circle
well,
doesn't
I mean,
help, but it doesn't look like a dick to me. You know what? We're gonna put this down in the description. You
No,
guys
we're not
write
gonna put it in the
comments down
description.
below.
I'm gonna put it on.
I'm putting
image.
I'm putting this in the description, and we're holding a poll. Does the drawing of we'll also put it on the Instagram page.
No, we're not.
So
we're not holding a fucking
yes.
poll. No, we're not.
We're holding a poll, putting
holding
it
a
on the Instagram page. It's in this. Write in the comments
I'm
down
used-
below,
I'm
guys.
gonna-
What do you think? Does the Christopher Nolan image look like a dick or not?
Yeah, does the
Or is
image?
Fareed just
Here.
good?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it next week.
You're a dick, Toby. Look, I'm
I'm a dick.
I'm using my authoritarian power to completely veto everything he just said.
I'm a
Look,
dick.
look, I don't know where we're going with this. We were talking about Stanley Kubrick. Anyways.
You bring me onto this show, and you
well, if
show that everything looks like a dick to me just to make fun of me.
I think this is the first time I've said something that's like anyway, I feel like this is turning into like an American Vandal season that it shouldn't be. Let's look.
I was trying to do the Joker, but yeah.
Well, if you wanna.
I see.
Bring it back
I
on
see.
the
I
rails
see
a
what you're
bit.
doing. Yeah, sorry, Bernard. Yes.
No worries. If you want to bring it back on the rails a bit, I wanted actually to expand on something you brushed upon earlier, but that we didn't finish. Was when you said I thought it was very interesting when you said that filmmaking is never been better. Like, you know, like the word the filmmaking has never been more awesome than it is today.
Yeah.
I think you're both right and wrong at the same time, because like as an art form, as a technical art form, for sure, filmmaking has never been better. Like we were talking about Star Wars, you know, today we do the kind of thing that Star Wars wanted to be in the 70s, and I think it's very important. I don't know how much it's talked about, but I think it's very important to recognize the internet in that as well. I think it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
movies
Mhm.
aren't just like
Very true.
just things on the big screen, that they can, like, the internet has given it a variety of forms, like filmmaking as a very large spectrum. YouTube can be filmmaking now, or like
Sure.
or like the internet has allowed short films to be like broadcast to a very big audience. So that's all well and good, but as an industry, I don't know. I think the industry is like, it's got rotten foundations. You know what I mean? And it's super presumptuous of me to say. You know what I mean? Like, I give off that vibe of like a film student who's, I know all about the industry, but
No,
like, obviously
no.
it's a super 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 complicated subject.
Yeah, I mean, as
But
long
it's
as one's
like,
aware of that.
when I look back at what I understand to be the state of things in New Hollywood, I can't help but think that we gotta, that's the way things should be.
Okay.
And it's easy to say that as a director, but that is to say, like, I really respect, like, producers as people, like, and their point of view. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there, Bernard, but if you don't mind me just saying one small thing about the New Hollywood, and then we can, if you don't mind, which is that I think that the New Hollywood wave, which, by the way, for me, as much as I'm all about today being the best time for cinema, the best decade for cinema by far in the history of cinema as a medium was the New Hollywood 70s decade. The whole thing that that Scorsese and all those De Palma that we're all doing is extraordinary, and that has gradually seeped its way into how now we treat independent cinema. And I do think actually it's like a double-edged sword, because while I agree with you about what you said about YouTube kind of providing a new platform, and technically speaking, from a technological perspective, from an evolution perspective, the accessibility of movie making is at an all-time high, undeniable.
Yeah.
What it's also, however, done is it is effectively beyond the saturation of competition of people trying to make movies. That's one thing, because talent can still stand out and we'll still get good films. It's also a thing of like what independent cinema used to be, like the notion of what independent filmmaking is kind of gone now. Like that's like Tarantino made a whole movie about that with Once Upon a Time. It was all about, there was a time in films, like that was the 60s, but there was a time that's no longer there anymore. And I think that it's both helping and hurting, as a lot of these things are. It's both helping and hurting the industry. But what
of independent filmmaking?
Yeah, that too. Like the I mean, now we're in this pandemic, and there's all a whole thing there too. But one can't really, like, the odds of having a sustainable career as an independent director, working and making indie films, like just churning out those A24 classics, that's really lessened. And the people who often do get those opportunities, many of them have fought their way to it, and kudos to them, and I have all the respect in the world to them. And I've also got all the respect in the world to those who were at a bit of an advantage, because they still probably fought. But the thing is, it's very hard to kind of, I don't want to be too cynical, but it is very difficult to find your footing in that environment and still thrive as an indie filmmaker. Like what you said is on point, the industry is kind of, there are many rotting things in there, like rotting factors, and that's certainly true, and it's certainly showing in some of the cinema that we're seeing.
That's why it's a shame that mainstream cinema should become like, just, it's kind of like a parody of itself. You know what I mean? And I'm like not saying anything new, but like, ironically, like when our good friend Nolan is one of those guys who's like, oh, filmmaking is this and that, and it's this format, and it's in this big screen. I say, like, I don't really mind the fact that the traditional cinema venues are crumbling down. Not that I want them to, but I don't think it's such a big tragedy, because to be too conservative and to be too like, oh, this is the way things should be, you're closing yourself up to new opportunities that the internet gives. And that's why our boy Marty is so excellently caught the Netflix train, and he's absolutely right in his discourse of saying that's what young people should be doing. So that's also why, like you said, it's very hard to become an independent filmmaker. That's true if you abide by traditional rules, but I think we agree that like it's crazy how fast and how broad talent can emerge from on the internet. So that's a good thing. But like at the same time, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really, it's kind of a moot point because I'm not at that stage yet, but I don't want to be like an indie filmmaker, you know what I mean? I want the big stage. And when you want the big stage, well then you just sort of default back to Disney or Marvel and stuff like that. You know, movies which, again, like I'm sorry because I know you like them, but to me it's just like it's kind of a perfect illustration of what we're talking about. Like all this cool technology, all this amazing power and VFX, and like the spectacle value of those movies is off the chain. But at the same time, they suck so hard because it's just like because it's just that. It's just like spectacle, you know? It's just like, you know, it's very trendy to say, oh, it's just green screen. That's not exactly true. It's not just green screen. But then again, it's also kind of like that. You know what I mean? Because they're conceived and they're operated by fundamentally where, like you said, there are a lot of people who do love comic books that make those movies. I think the real um, power holders don't really care so much, and you can kind of feel it that they don't really care about their audience. You know, I don't know, but then again, like to take with a real grain of salt because I haven't seen many of them, and as you guys know, I'm biased. But
Yeah, well,
it's just I don't know. I think if we had if we sort of pushed all together to have a business that's made like by filmmakers for filmmakers, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter that, you know, how to say. I think there's a lot of things we could sacrifice in pursuit of just making sure our movies are good, you know, and that they're not just like powerful enough to win against Disney, because that's a shitty thing to strive for.
But it's also unfortunate. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're at that point now, and you know what? Having sort of recontextualized what you were saying in terms of you want to make movies that are on the big stage. You know what I mean? That's something that I really now have to factor in because yeah, when you look at it, and sort of what our boy Marty was touching up on was also the idea of the Marvel films being theme park movies. You know, I'll just bracket superhero films into that equation generally. Let's say, the thing is, we don't get a lot of those like big stage like I don't want to say just big budget, but like you know like those mainstream, let's say, populist entertainment films that aren't a franchise that is linked to Disney or superheroes or Star Wars. It's very rare to get those, and if you do get those, they're also following that very kind of recycled and rehashed format. You know, like the like
well,
I don't want Dwayne Johnson to come kill me, but like you look at his films, you know, they're the same movie, and I know that Bernard, you're somebody who strives in the midst of trying to make something that's grand and epic. You want to strive for artistic integrity, you know, and I know that when you look at the slate of films that tends to be released, sans the Marvel Disney thing, which is its own thing, and that you know we can say what we want on, but like there are not many examples, let's say, of films that can appease you. You know what I mean? I think.
well, I mean, like, I'm gonna address this. It's the elephant in the room, and I know it's never brought up. Say what you will about Marvel movies, but people have been trying to copy that formula for years, for the last decade. And how many franchises have stayed? How many are there? It's just
I
Marvel.
think it's just Marvel, right? Yeah,
Star Wars
it's just
hasn't even been able to do it. And that to say that there isn't someone who cares, I'm gonna have to say, Bernard, I respect your opinion, but knowing what Kevin Feige does and the vision you have to have for that, I'm gonna have to disagree, my friend, because no one else in the history of cinema has ever made it work except this guy, and that's not a statement to not acknowledge.
Well, yeah, but what do you mean by made it work?
Well, how do you make a franchise of like 22 films over the course of 10 years, and it all works? Everyone knows the characters. It becomes the highest grossing film of all time. DC tried to do it. Universal tried to do it. Who are the guys who are doing the King Kong Godzilla universe? Universal, Warner Brothers. No studio has been able to get that Marvel money. Star Wars came back, and they're kind of trying to do a Marvel universe as well, where it's all connected, and sure, it's more to franchise Star Wars out, but nothing has lasted. Nothing stuck around, and they
Well, that's because they have a powerful formula that's geared towards bringing people back to the box office. But
Sure.
that doesn't make them good movies.
Sure, maybe good movies, bad movies, that's not what I'm discussing here. I'm more saying the feat itself of
The
22
achievement.
movies.
Yeah, the achievement,
It's
of having 22 movies that are in the same interconnected universe. Like that was certainly, it's true what Toby's saying, that had never been done before. Like the
say what you will, like let's say they're bad movies. That's fine, but like to have that success, to do that feat, it's got to be something, and the people are coming back. That speaks.
Well, the thing is I think it's beyond just because look, Marvel movies are generally well received. Like they're the critics even like they generally like those films. So when it comes down to
Paid off by Disney.
paid off by Disney, just like did I say that earlier as well?
I'm fighting for both sides.
Well, here's the thing, like.
Whoever's gonna pay me more.
When you don't like a certain genre or a certain type of cinema, or anything, comic or literature or whatever, it's like, no amount of achievement in the world can really change that, So it's like you can't really. At the end of the day, Bernard's right in saying that there's a certain like very factorized approach to the Marvel movies that's a huge turnoff, and also of course for him to have a general disapproval of superhero cinema, perfectly valid and great.
Sure.
And also what you're saying, Toby, about the fact that we have a shared universe with all these movies, and that it's this monumental feat of filmmaking and technical ingenuity too, with for what they did with visual, with just all of that manpower. Again, huge achievement in terms of film craftsmanship, and in movie history it has a place, but at the same time, like, those are separate. You can see what I mean by like those are separate entities. Like you can't really, like they're both absolutely right in what they're saying. So I mean, I'll just to put the final word on it, I'll just say like what we can at least be hopeful about, even for what you're saying, Bernard, about sort of films in the big scale, is hopefully that there will be. You see, because we got guys like Nolan out there who are showing that high concept movies don't necessarily have to be schlock, and so long as we're encouraging talent like that, and I've always said we need more people like him, because also not a lot of people generally love Christopher Nolan, but there are also people who don't, and I think we need more figures like that working in the mainstream who are able to get massive budgets to make Tenet or something, like, which we haven't even talked about Tenet yet, but like, oh no, we did actually, yeah, you weren't all for the trailer, so
I liked it.
yeah, I thought that was okay. I mean, it's typical Christopher Nolan, it's like it's got that like espionage, people in suits, like blue. You gotta wait and see the movie. Yeah, like I remember the Dunkirk trailer didn't do it for me, and I actually quite liked Dunkirk in the end.
Because they weren't wearing any suits.
They weren't. They were wearing soldier uniform. Made the difference. I couldn't.
I was like, you've changed, Nolan. You've changed. And then like
You're not wearing.
And then he came back with the suits, and I'm like, okay, well,
he hasn't changed
we'll see
at
what
all.
he's doing.
He's still wearing his suit. That guy wears a blazer to the set of his movies. Like Bernard, I don't know if you know about this, but like he is so adamant about his dress code on a shoot. And you cut to like, I don't know, Peter Jackson wearing shorts, cycling around New Zealand. But this actually is a wonderful segue. Bernard, I have a question for you, my friend. It's a question that haunts all three of us. What did you learn from film school?
I learned that you don't need a lot to make good stuff. Like you just need to have your like a good head on your shoulders, like to have your heart in the right place, and that as long as you try to do good, then that's good enough. Because when you go into film school, like film school is a good sift for like every guy who comes in there thinks he's gonna revolutionize the genre, and I can tell you that from experience because I have a huge melon. Like when I got there, I was like, like I have really like all these good ideas, like I could easily, I don't know about everybody else in the world, but I'm pretty sure I could blow a lot of people out of the water, and I still do believe in myself in that way. But like what I really learned from film school is that the person that came out of film school would have very much liked to meet the person that got in there to give him a slap in the face and be like, all right, like check yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like filmmaking isn't about competition. It's not about like wanting to show everybody who's got a bigger John. Like it's not. Filmmaking isn't like every student film that I used to embark on was like I need it to be a masterpiece, like because I need every film must have some standard, like you know me, I'm a guy of standards, but at the same time it's like, whew, fuck, like to like you guys know this. I'm gonna say this for the audience, but basically, it's a long story that I'm gonna make very short. But like my end of year, like my end of studies film, which is about a girl robot who sort of comes to life, was a huge disaster because I spent the whole year like obsessing on it, you know, like so much to the point where I thought like I wouldn't have admitted it to myself, but now in hindsight I totally have to, that I was almost doing it like just for the cool factor of it. Like I worked so hard, like, oh, I wrote 14 versions of that script, you know, when I just didn't need to, you know. But I just like, I thought, because I thought, I was so convinced that the harder I worked for it, the better it was going to be. But I wasn't looking at the right stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And not only did the film suffer because it became like needlessly complicated and philosophical, and it was just going to be a 4-minute short film in the end, you know. So I should have like kept my mind on the right things. I wanted the absolute best gear. I wanted the absolute best this, that. You know, it was like all or nothing. You know, it was absolutely had to be perfect. But it didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be like, you know, like good. Like, and what good means, because that's the whole question I think of our entire lives, isn't it? Like, what makes good movies is just like, because that's what you want to learn in film school, what makes good movies. And what makes good movies fundamentally is to be honest with yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To be like, all right, I made this. I can, like, you like it or not, I can tell you where it's from, what it means. I can justify it, and I can proudly say it's my own. And that's what I think a good filmmaking is. And by that rationale, like, you know, like all that stuff I said about comic book films, like, you know, I would never ever discount an actual Marvel film director or creator, like, you know, if they talk to me what their movie means, you know, like that, as long as they can defend it, that's good enough for me, and that makes it a good film in its own right, just because of that.
And you know what?
Later, just to wrap up, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but just to wrap up the story. So then later, like, I was so traumatized by that experience because, like, you know, when I showed the film twice in public about the robot girl, and I could like, I could hear the politeness in people's clapping, like, we don't get it, but good enough, you know. And I was like, oh shit, you know, because I can't even tell you what it means, you know. I don't even know. I just lost myself so much in this sort of whirlwind of trying to make the perfect film, and it was bullshit. So, and then later the film I made after that was like totally the opposite. It was just me, a couple of friends, enough gear to make it look cool and like professional enough so that it's not ridiculous. It was a silly story about a homeless guy who gets in a fight with the devil, and I like that movie, for example. Like, I have a very hard time, and actually I wanted to touch about this with you, Fried, about the whole festival circuit thing, because I think there's a lot to be said, and I would really like to learn a lot from you about that. But yeah, see, I made that movie. For now, it's not successful, but I think it's the best film that I ever made, because I think it's fucking funny, and I can tell you all the choices I made, and I look at it, and it makes me smile, and I think that's ultimately the answer to your question, is that what you learn in film school is how to take from, like, how to become the person that's like, oh, I need to make the best movies, to be like, all right, what do I have to offer? You know, what do I like, and
100%.
What can I contribute?
Yeah, collaboration.
It's like what Kennedy said. You know, like
we shall go to the moon.
Yeah, no, he said some stuff about.
I don't need that helmet.
Think about what you can do for your country. It's kind of like the same thing. It's like, don't think about what. If you're getting into filmmaking, this is for everybody, like, who's doing filmmaking at any level, because I think it's maybe like the most important thing. Don't think about like, what's how do I make my movie better and always better than everybody else's. It's like, okay, what can I show the audience? Like, how can I deliver a good positive experience for the audience without like making fun of or not making fun of them, that can happen, but more like not taking them for granted or not looking down upon them or not being like, yeah, fuck you, like my movies are good.
Yeah.
There are some
Well,
filmmakers
you're
who
talking
do
about
that.
filmmakers' ego, man, which is transcendental to it transcends film school even at that point. But in film school, that's when it hits an all-time high. You know what I mean? That's when it
Oh,
feels
absolutely.
that's when
I mean, you're in there
that's
now,
when it starts to
and
feel. Yeah, and that's what Bernard is talking about. He's talking about, in a lot of ways, like the melon thing you said is very true. Like, it's great to acknowledge that one has like great ideas and that you're entering an environment and you're confident in your approach. The danger.
And maybe those things that like will make you succeed in film school weren't that popular when you were in high school or something like that. Like maybe you were made fun of it for now, but now you got like, now I'm gonna be the king of the castle. you
Yeah,
know?
but and so to
Yeah, there's part of that too.
well, to build on what, because Bernard, you're absolutely right in talking about how ultimately it was the honesty of your work and the approach that made that to, and I agree that I think is what quality cinema is, because you can never really deem from an objective standpoint something to be of quality in film or in art, but what we can say is if it meant something to you and if you watch it back and you got that smile thinking that's the movie I wanted to make, I was honest with myself, I was aware of my imperfections but also aware of my strengths, and you played on them, that's what it's all about, you know. And I think that I want to just, because if I'd ask myself that question, it would really just be perseverance, you know what I mean. You mentioned Kennedy, and you know it's funny, I immediately thought of another Kennedy quote which was regarding the whole moon thing, but you know he said we choose to go to the moon not because it is easy but because it is hard, you know. And that was basically Kennedy's become a part of this podcast. It's basically it's the concept of we can survive through this, and we can we know we're gonna fight for it. It's filmmaking just by trade is an incredibly difficult profession to pursue. You're crazy to be a movie director. It truly, there's a bit of that lofty dreamer ambition in there that's admirable, but also very, very, you know, have to be a little dangerous.
But also some ego in that. There's inherently a bit of narcissism to believe that your story is, but that's not a bad thing. A little bit of narcissism
That's fantastic.
is good.
Yeah, I mean,
Keeps
you're talking to like a full.
self-preservation.
Yeah, totally, and that's why when I left film school, along with what you're saying, Bernard, it's also to do with. I know that I have to really stick to my guts, and that when I'm out of film school, there's going to be maybe years, if not decades, of me still maybe being in a bit of a rut, you know, because I'm trying to launch myself into a world that's incredibly difficult. Now, opportunities come, but they also go, and you're just going to have to get used to that wavelength of there's going to be a beautiful Tuesday where you have a meeting with an agent, and then a horrid Friday where you're going to get turned down from that script that you wrote that wasn't even going to get, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, so, you know, this actually trickles into my next question and point, really, which is now that we're out of film school and you, Bernard, are also out, how are you, what are you trying to do right now as a creative beyond just I'm making film? I mean, we're in quarantine now, but like, you know, what are you trying to do to keep yourself kind of motivated and focused on pursuing that goal?
Well, that's a good question too, and this is gonna sound like a real doomer answer.
That's
but
fine, man.
what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to make movies, because like just to get like on that pedestal of actually making movies, that in itself is super hard. I mean, like I wish I could say something like, oh, you know, I try to. That doesn't mean I don't do anything, but it's like, long story short, right now, like you know this, Freed, but since I wasn't getting any feedback on the festival run with that other Devil movie that I'd made last June, in around November last year, I settled for a paying job as an editor for this company, the startup that does what do you call them? I don't know what the term is in English, but like basically like it's not advertisements, but it's like
TV spots?
No, corporate films, like videos for corporations.
Yeah,
you know,
corporate
to
corporate
expose
videos,
their
corporate videos. Yeah,
yeah. But not in a sort of like dry, terrible way. You know, we try to elevate the form to make cool videos. And on that note, like last time we met, Farid, I was very upset about that, because I was like, oh, you know, I'm not making like cool fiction movies like I want to. Now I'm just like a desk job guy, but that's gotten better. That's gotten better.
That's
it's
good.
still
Man.
not.
It's good to hear.
It's still not as not as good as making fiction, but but yeah, I get by, and I think that's a good lesson for all independent filmmakers who listen to this podcast. Is really, like, this may sound weird, but one of the things you have to what I've learned right now with this job is get paid. Like, seriously,
Make
like
money.
get a
Make
get
money.
a
Just
ma-
find
get
a way
a
to make
get a
money.
financial thing going, because there's no point in just trying to like, people say, oh, you can make movies on a shoestring and like on an iPhone, but like you still need some kind of thing, like, to, you don't want to make movies on pennies. Like, nobody wants to do that, or like I at least I don't know, I certainly don't want to do that. So right now what I'm doing is I'm getting my financial shit in order, and I'm trying,
Perfect.
always looking
That's the
for
way.
like when's the next foothold. Like, for example, during this quarantine, I wrote a lot, so
Mhm.
I may get on that. And also another thing I want to do is, I've been meaning to. I'm not exactly satisfied with like stuff that I've written. Like, it's not great, but it's not. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great at the same time. So I was thinking of actually starting to read a lot of short stories to see if, like, I could find something worthy of making a good movie out of.
Fantastic. Yeah, me too. I'm doing something
I-
similar, actually. Yeah.
I also started working in January with this rock band that I'm going to shamelessly plug right now. This French rock band called Au New Dawn,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, their drummer is a friend of mine, and they're really quite good. And I started to, I mean, they're pretty much like trying to do what we do, like, in terms of music. They're trying to get something off the ground, and like, their music has moved around a lot on the internet to some positive feedback, so that's good. So now we're just trying to like, make like videos. Like, there are 2 music video projects that I'm trying to do with them.
That's good.
I've been working for a long time. Like, I filmed them. They did a whole concert in a studio, so like, that's a long project that I had 5 hours of rushes to do, but I'm getting through it to like this sort of like concert movie, like how what radio did at some point, like just a concert in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm always just sort of like trying to find a way to
We can address
make
things
movies.
multiple times.
But moreover, I'm also trying to find a way to use the movies I have, and to use the movies I have, like, I'm trying to do a big festival run, but I've had very little success with that, and I was hoping, actually, we could talk about it, because to
Sure.
be honest, I've only heard the first episode of the podcast you guys made,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if this has been addressed. So if it's been addressed in other
No,
episodes,
I
we
don't
need
think
to
so.
go over
No,
it.
no, no,
I'll
not
just listen
really.
to. But
W-
like,
yeah,
I know
once in a
Farid,
while.
for example, you have a phenomenal festival run, like, to your movies. So it's like, it makes me almost feel like there's some sort of trick to it. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be
Be
some
nice
sort
to
of
your
method,
parents.
because I like put it all over the place, my other movie, and unless like everybody unanimously thought
Yeah.
that it sucked, which I hope not.
No way. I've seen the film. There's no
It's
way.
just like, I don't know. I thought it would have
Um,
more, like, at least 1 or 2 like positive. festivals.
Right. Okay. So, first off, just really quickly, what you mentioned about being financially stable out of film school, great idea. Everybody out there should aim to make money at this, no matter what. Your film career.
And there's no shame about it.
yeah,
There's no
to get a
shame about
haircut,
it.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
unartistic to
Yeah.
like get your shit together.
It is, and also imagine if you do get funding for a movie, but you're still broke in your own personal life. So you've got to manage making a massive film or your first movie, but also living on pennies. Nobody wants to be in that situation. That's the worst situation. So yeah, secure yourself, get that backbone. Festivals. I talked about it very briefly on our, I think, 3rd episode. I just, here and there, you should send it to festivals. It could be cool. Well, so film festivals are a tricky thing, because as much as they're great in a way, because they put your film out there, they give you a sort of a platform where you can, well, not even a platform, but they give you sort of opportunities to showcase your work. Number one, the first thing to note is those laurels that you get on your poster. They ultimately do add some degree of credibility to your film, and it shows that the filmmaker is making a conscious effort to get the film out there, which is attractive, even if it's not Cannes or Sundance or any of the big major, big ones like Berlin. It's showing people that this guy or gal is trying to get their movie out there, and there's effort for them to not just be like those basement geniuses where it's like, I made a great movie and I'm just like, not doing anything about it. So that's the first thing, just about the concept of why we should apply. As for how to go about doing it, well, it's not so much a formula as so much about judge of character. You've got to sort of look at these, like if you're using Film Freeway, which is now the standard place to go to apply for festivals.
I got several of those like platforms.
Yeah,
I mean,
Film Freeway is the big one, and a little technical tip is just to make sure you're always clicking on there's one which is best reviewed, and in the best reviewed option you get many monthly, bi-monthly, and annual festivals, which kind of give you the first few options are pretty strong. So you already know in the best reviewed you're getting into festivals which have a good history with their selections, and also with like the people that the filmmakers themselves. Then also you've got to look at sort of and really judge, is your movie not only the quality of the film but the production of the film, like the way it was shot, the budget, is it of a certain standing that it can is it worthy enough, or does it have the pedigree enough to get into something like a Sundance or a Slam Dance or even a Rain Dance or any of these things? Because even Rain Dance ain't Cannes, but Rain Dance is Rain Dance. And there is a difference between Top Short's monthly film festival, which is an awesome festival and great service, but it's not Sundance. It's not a Redford-funded festival. So you've got to look at your movie from a budget perspective. If it's shot on a 5D or a DSLR, very minimal, low budget, that's going to factor into the selection even if the movie's great, because they're going to be like, well, he made it for low budget. We got all these people who like put in the 4-digit figures into their movie, and that's kind of what happens. What also can happen is sometimes, Bernard, a lot of these festivals, they will see that your film, and it's weird because it's happened to me also a couple times, and they will see that your film, it may be a like well told story, it might be a good movie, but they often tend to value just how much does it feel like a film as opposed to how good is it as a film, if you know what I mean. It's like, does that feel like
Could you elaborate on that, Fareed?
What it means is, if you're watching a movie, like, does it give me the sensation that I'm watching an actual movie? Like, do I at any point acknowledge this as an actual like cohesive and proper work of cinema, irrespective of the quality of what I'm watching? Does it feel like I'm watching something that's of, I dare say, like theater quality or something, and I'm not talking camera or budget anymore. I'm just talking the assemblage and just like the sensation of how it's put together. And that's why you often see some movies that aren't great that get in festivals a lot, because they follow a very specific format and sort of like boxing of how they're put together, where it feels like you're just seeing a film. It's hard to kind of describe this, but it's basically to do with the sensation of how it feels and flows, as opposed to, is it any good? How does it speak to you, a jury member? I don't know if you kind of got me there, Bernard, but that's something I've noticed a lot.
No, I totally. Yeah. And if I'm being honest, I think that may be one of the things that's stopping my movie. Because again, I like it, but it's like I can tell that there's a certain standard that's not quite yet met.
Yeah, like I'll tell you, with my own short films, I've always.
But surely there must be festivals that actually cater to that.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely, dude. Of course, that's what I was gonna say. Which is, if you go to the best reviewed section, and if you just also it depends on how many you're submitting to. You should be submitting left, right, and center for short films. You should be going. I know there's money involved there, but you should really be. Ideally, there should be at least 60 submissions to start with, and then more. Because then you just got process of selection. You got many more options. The other thing is, like, look, my movies as well. Like you said, they've had some. I'm very lucky and honored that they've had some festival success, and it was for me, it was like I deliberately sometimes would make those movies in a way where either there's a certain feel to them, tonally speaking, like Perform, for example, that movie that you helped me out with, Bernard and Toby, you were on the shoot for. That film has the ebb and flow of a like a Twilight Zone episode almost. It has like a very genre esque, like it's a genre film. You know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
yeah, it kind of
Right.
qualifies as an art film because it's got a guy who's going crazy and it's got some, like deeper character study, whatever. But it still has a bit of a tongue in cheek genre film quality with the black and white 4:3. You know what I mean? And then I made other movies that were like these silent, kind of brooding, like very radically experimental kind of art movies that didn't really have much narrative. But that was the polar opposite. You see what I'm saying? There was no middle ground. It's either I'm gonna go full on like I'm like the experimental filmmaker who make new dialogue, or I'm gonna go here's a genre piece. It's still gonna have some integrity and like my sensibilities. I can't help that, but it is going to feel like an accessible product much more. You know what I'm saying? Those are two opposite ends, and with festivals, they're either looking for one or the other. So if there's a fusion in the middle where, and that's usually those aren't even very good, where you're seeing something that's trying too much to be, sort of accessible, but at the same time inaccessible and inscrutable. That's when you run into trouble. And I don't think that of your film at all. As a matter of fact, I think your film is very accessible. It has some, there's like that whole sequence. I don't want to give it away, but the ending has a pretty interesting, like how the way you shot it is kind of unique. But nothing about that movie screams out to me as like, veering on something that only art festivals will appreciate. It's like I think with
Right.
your film, it's just a case of making sure you're kind of weeding out the good options, like going to the best reviewed category and just trying to submit. I can give you a few links if you want as well. Just looking at the various, just going as many places as you can, because that film will definitely get more attention from festivals, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, something to think about, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I hope that answers your question in some way.
Well, ultimately, I think my true question is not one that you can answer. Because, if there was like an actual method for getting
Because there's no
maybe
one
I'm
way.
just really impatient.
Yeah,
but I
because
was
there's
just
no
like,
trick. There's no trick. Like you said, there's no.
I mean, surely this speaks to a lot of people listening. This sort of like you wait around for like one answer once in a blue moon that's like, oh, nope, not submitted, and then your buddies are like, oh, my film has gone to fucking 36 countries and I can't even remember how many awards I have. It's like you sort of feel like surely it's not just luck. But maybe it is. I don't know.
It's
Maybe I'll
a
just have to
combo.
wait-
It's a
wait
stroke
and
of
see.
it's a stroke of both, man. And oftentimes there are great movies that are amazing that don't get any festival attention. Just that happens. It's very strange. It's not like Instagram where there's like an algorithm. It's just like this is
Yeah.
what happens. But I do encourage anybody.
What about you, Toby?
Yeah, Toby.
No, I just was saying, like luck
No, but,
is
but
a
what-
big part of
no,
it.
but what about you in terms of like festivals? Like, do you have any read on that? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm still trying to sound mix mine to send it out, but
Yours is dope too. I really like that film.
yeah.
thank you very much. I'm trying to. I know it has a real chance, so I want to plan it out correctly. But until I get the sound mix figured out, can't do any shit at all, which is upsetting to me because the rest of it is so ready to go. I just need to do a film poster, and the rest of the packet is ready. And it just irks me to no end.
So I guess I just want to ask you, Bernard, as somebody who's dabbled in directing, as a first AD, as a writer, all these things, like, I want to just, if you had any interesting experiences you want to share with us from your shoots, especially the bad ones, like what are some of your worst experiences? Because those are the ones we can really learn from. And it could be as like an issue with like tardiness. It could be an issue with sort of organization. It could be whatever on anybody. Because you're also I'm really treating you like an AD right now because I know that's when you really bear the brunt of that stuff. So, as a first AD, for example, what was something you had to deal with which was like
It's another good question.
I'm all about those, man. Yeah.
No, but like that's I see it's a good question because fundamentally I think that's what movie making is about. It's about how to do your craft well, and bad experiences are like signs of, if you can't do that at your level, or if you can't fix that problem at your level, then it's always going to be a problem. So I think I don't know. I could have concrete examples, but I think it's fair to say that personally, bad experiences that I have always or nearly always come down to the same thing, which is I'm gonna speak for myself here because this is a problem that I have that I keep working on, and a lot of people told me that I have. It's kind of like my Achilles heel, but I don't know if this is gonna speak to other people. If it does, fantastic. But it's kind of like what I said earlier about having a big melon. Like I hold myself to a very, very, very high standard because I think it's important to not just be like, undisciplined in life and just be like, whatever, man, like.
So
just
cool, dude.
Yeah, I'm an easygoing guy. Like, fine, and that makes you fun at parties and good for you. But like, if you want to like be a filmmaker, you have to have your shit together. Really, that's what filmmaking is having your shit together and doing right by yourself, by the audience who wants to see your movie, or even if they don't, like to deliver.
Yeah.
So
You
the
need to
problems
be
I always run
respectable.
into. What's that?
You need to be respectable.
Yeah, exactly. And the problems I run into is I often butt heads with people that, unfortunately, I have a very hard time. It's kind of like, it really kind of sucks when you're a filmmaker because you have to be like I think it's a lot like being a good king in a kingdom. Like you have to be tough with yourself, with others, but you really also have to have a loose grip and be flexible. And I kind of struggle with that because I'll get like, for example, I'll get upset at people like for being like 5 minutes late, because I wouldn't allow that. But and I'm not saying like, to anybody listening that like I'm a total hard ass about that, but it's like it's very hard to, I guess what I'm trying to say is like you have to know how to work with different people and different work rhythms, even if you don't necessarily agree.
You gotta be
with
be an emotional chameleon, man. You gotta really be like flexible to each individual in terms of not only what they've done that may perhaps be an inciting incident or for a confrontation, but also like what that could potentially mean for that general collaboration for the rest of the shoot. It's very like tricky line. I mean, Bernard, sorry to cut you off, but that reminds me a lot of like I used to kind of have an issue with assertiveness when I was in film school, and anybody who was in film school with me would attest to that. I was kind of, it's not just a question of being shy, because at the time now I'm kind of very take no prisoners about movie making, even more so than I was maybe even last year. Like I'm very not tough as nails to the point where I'm like abrasive or anything, but I'm definitely far less tolerant of what I see is like a blatant sort of disregard for my work or my integrity or the fucking money I'm putting into the shoot, but it's also to do with back in film school I just let people walk all over my shoot because I wanted to please everybody. I wanted everybody to be happy. It's like, okay, yeah, we're all in this, we're happy, we're having a good time, movie making's fun, we're a family. It's all bullshit, because the thing is, that attitude, like, it's great to have fun making a movie. It's great to have camaraderie and, like, proper, true friendships forming. Beautiful. But at the end of the day...
But you can be friends while doing a good job.
That's right, right, you can. And...
being friends doesn't mean goofing off. Like, sometimes I enjoy doing my job.
Yeah.
I enjoy working, so
it's a question of tolerance. Like I do think, and I think even then it should be under the guise of, look, we're getting along, we're bonding, we're having a ball doing this. Like, let's say I'm like with person A tells person B that if person B screws up, they should have no trouble being chewed out by person A, because that's how it is. Like, it's okay, we're pals, but we're making it's going to work, and again, as filmmakers, it's that human element. I think it is important actually to go to parties and meet people and just I'm guessing this is not even film related, but just be sociable and just be very open to different experiences.
Just like, for your mental health, please.
Just for mental health, literally, like who you're. I don't know. It goes to anything. Like who you're spending time with, who you're dating. The places you go to in your free time. Like it's not only like gonna nourish you creatively, obviously, but also it's important to kind of get yourself at ease with the way you can gauge a person when you're about to get to work with them. And Bernard, I mean, having worked with you, Bernard, I can tell you firsthand, like, you're very good at doing that. You're very adept. And it seems like the kind of adept sort of approach that can only come from experience, and somebody who really does think about, like, because if you're thinking about stuff like this, then you're on the right track. When you're thinking about just that fine line of how am I gonna carry myself in the midst of something, I mean, those are real like filmmaker questions, and
I mean, when you're in that situation, you don't have time to decide. Then you have to have decided before.
yeah,
That's right.
absolutely. Sorry I cut you off there, Bernard, bro, but like
No, that's fine.
I hope I reinforced what you were saying. Then.
No, that's cool because I was kind of ranting at the same time, but like
A rant is a beautiful thing, my friend.
to give you a concrete example, like well, paradoxically, while my Robot Girl movie wasn't working out, like the final result didn't work out the way I wanted. I had a blast on that shoot,
Yeah.
because it was a good team. I was backed by a very very cool producing student called Felix Mounet. Shout out to him. Who's really invested in doing the movie with me, and that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of producer you want to have at your side when you're a director, someone who thinks about like money and production wise, but is also very sensitive to
Nice.
what you're trying to do as an artist.
Oh, that's beautiful. We need more angels. It's proof angels exist in this world. You know, when you get that combo.
Yeah, pretty good, dude. And but like at one point, I was struggling with with a guy who might listen to this, maybe, but not a bad dude, but it was this guy, like, I won't name him just for on principle.
Yeah,
but
don't go Ilya Kazan. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was camera assistant on the movie, and it was a good friend of mine as a person, and he, how to put this, I had a problem with him because his whole thing was like he was very good at his job, like really good as a camera assistant, you know, but in his mind you could see that it sort of seeped through him that as long as that was down, then everything was cool, which it wasn't, because he was always like cracking jokes with everybody, you know, and like he was really like not like that's the hard part, is that it was too chill, like too relaxed, like everything was a joke to him, you know, like it was all, yeah, whatever. Like at some point, for example, I'll give you an example. Get this, I have to shoot a shot of a guy like digging a grave for his little boy, so fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it was in a garden. I'm standing a few meters away because it's a wide shot and I can't be in the shot behind a monitor, and I can't hear what's going on several meters away with my guy like digging a grave.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are close to him are 2 or 3 people handling the camera at a sort of like shit, I can't remember how you say it in English, but like, you know, when contre-plongée. Never mind. We'll figure it out. Anyway,
Okay.
so the small crew is close to this guy, and from a few meters away, I see the guy digging painstakingly. I can see his face on the monitor, and it looks good. The shot looks good and everything. And I can hear the camera crew like just sort of talking amongst themselves. You know, I'm thinking, well, they're talking about the shot. And then I say, okay, cut, and that went great. And I went to talk to the guy called Michael, the guy who was the actor. I said, that was great. And he said, yeah, but like your camera assistant kept like making poop jokes about some stuff he learned on the internet while I was doing that take. And he wasn't even trying to, he wasn't really pissed. He was just like, can you have a talk with him? And I was like, I was pissed, like, because that's how the guy did all the time. As long as he did his job, everything was like fun and games. And he didn't like, that's another thing.
But now he's not even doing his job. He's interrupting the process. Like, you don't talk during a take. It doesn't matter if there's sound or not.
Yeah.
You don't talk during a take. The actor is working. Jesus.
And it was tough because he's a guy that a lot of people like for good reason, because he's a nice dude, you know? And so that sort of excused everything. And that's the back to what I was saying earlier. It's the hard part because I can rant about that, but I'm not exactly in the right either. You know what I mean? It's like you have to adapt to that. Unfortunately, there's no, I was like, you can bet I was fucking trying to move heaven and earth to see if there was some sort of like way that I could justify, like, you're doing a bad job on my movie and I'm righteous because I'm like, I was ready to, there was a part where like there was actually a big storm headed our way, and that was really bad because we had a lot of stuff outside.
I thought the storm you meant was your emotions, but okay.
That at the same time, Like
Yeah.
basically I'm trying to do some insert shots. I was running around yelling and everything. Like let's get these shots in. While part of the crew was like under heavy rainfall, like trying to salvage like stuff from outside. And while I'm filming an insert, I hear music and I look around and this guy was like listening to some rap on his phone and he looks at me like dead in the eye and he's like, "Hey, it's that new music video from such and such guy. It's pretty cool." I'm like, "Are you fucking serious?" Just because we're not rolling sound
Yeah.
doesn't mean like, and like it was almost like he was doing it on purpose. Like he
Mhm.
knew I was frantically trying to get shots from my movie and he's like, "Whatever, I'm just going to do my own thing." So that's a bad experience I had, and that I think speaks
Yeah.
to many people. Like when you have to, uh, it's like you're trying to do your own thing, but at the same time, you gotta contend with what everybody's doing. So,
Well, you.
and here we're talking about crews of like 10 people, so that's why like if you're on a huge shoot, obviously you can't handle everybody, but you know
Mhm.
if like if there's some shit that's going on your shoot that's like um that's really slowing down the process. It's so tough because you as a director, you have responsibility for the movie, you have financial responsibility to your producers and everything. You have to deliver, and then like you know, some people are just late, or like smoke weed on set. I'm not
Mhm.
like one of those. Like I'm not against smoking weed. I
But
dabble,
on
but
set,
like
that's not.
not on
That's not the
set.
place.
You know what I
That's
mean?
not
It's
the
like,
place or time.
but yeah, what can you do? That's really
Yeah.
it's like an open-ended question. There's no real answer. What
You don't
can you
drink on
do?
set. You don't
'Cause if you're
smoke weed on set. You don't
if
do
you're
any of
if
those
you're a
things you do in
tyrant,
time.
if you're a tyrant, and I have consciously tried to be tyrannical to see if it was gonna help my case. I was like, I'm all right if people don't like me,
Mhm.
as long as I. But that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That really doesn't work either.
I'm gonna just chime in very briefly on something you said particularly, which first off, the whole question of like the whole like tyrant thing element or not. I will say this: when you're in a situation where, at least in my case, when you were because I made a lot of short films after film school, where I was very much going at it solo and using mostly my own money, and granted there was money put into them, but I also found myself very much being at the mercy of my crew because they were willing to come work with me for free and put in the hours just for this one film that I wanted to do, and it's not like I'm a walking production company, it's just like this is one guy, he's making movies. And so there was certain things that we maybe deem as vices to some extent, for example, that I was more tolerant of, so long as it didn't seem to affect the work ethic of the people involved. And there's some there's some cases even where, even if you do see there's an effect, what you do is what I did was I pulled them over, I had a little discussion, said, hey, look, this could be an issue, or can you at least be mindful of it? And then that was that. But the thing was, but even if things went better or worse after that, a lot of the times I found myself being unable to really be like, have that one-on-one word where I was really able to put the final word, like, put my foot down as much as I would have liked. I mean, I certainly did. I mean, like I said, I used to struggle with assertiveness and then really, change my ways in that front. But when it came to shooting movies just on my own, doing personal projects, I had to be very careful with how I had to manage people and some of their tendencies, like, so anyway, that was just a little side anecdote to what you were saying, Bernard, about working with people.
I guess the whole lesson about that is, I think the best way to deal with that kind of stuff is to just keep doing your own thing as a film director. Like, just focus on what you have to do.
Yeah.
Because again, it all comes down to like, there's no point in having that sort of power trying to make movies, or even like ranting about this kind of stuff if you can't deliver.
Yeah. And also in the process, it'd be nice if you got them to like you a little bit, because even if they're you're working with crew that maybe aren't big on you, aren't like that maybe they have some questionable etiquette which should be fixed. If they're very fond of you and want to see you succeed, it kind of does become a thing where, I'm speaking specifically for personal projects, outside of school, it's like they'll kind of want to just see it through anyway and just put in that little extra bit of effort. I've seen that happen. Anyway, I'm sorry, Bernard, I cut you off, bro. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No worries. So like, just do your own thing, carry yourself well, and as long as as you can do that, and other people can do their own thing, if it doesn't impede your movie or you're doing your job, then I guess that's fine. Because like I wanted to add a little addendum to something I said earlier. Like when I said smoking weed, like that's just an example. It can be whatever practice or whatever, however you are as a person, however you act on set. I think everything's fine, really, as long as you can still do your job and not get in the way of making a movie. And so you might hear this and saying, but that totally contradicts what you were saying with your camera assistant. You know, that his mannerisms were upsetting me, is that they were in my way. You know, they were stopping my actor from doing a good job.
They were offsetting the atmosphere of the film.
They were absolutely not at the right time, not at the right moment. They weren't discreet. You know, there wasn't at all this idea of like, you know, I should not get in the way of other people doing their job, you know? So if you're like me, listeners, and you get very upset by other people like not being on the same wavelength as you, there's no solution to it. You can't get people to be on your same wavelength. What you have to do is just keep your own wavelength in mind, do your own thing, and that's, you know, Farid, you were saying like it's good if people get to like you. That's true, but people only like you, I think, if people like competence. You said something that I thought was interesting, is that you approached shoots as like being one big family, and we all like this job and everything. You know, I think it's very noble to think like that, but I don't think it's very true to reality, because like grips, for example, aren't there to make a family, like to make movies. Grips are here to get paid and to do grip stuff, you know? And that's something like directors need to realize all the time. It's like, I think when you're a director, the circle of people who want to make the movie is extremely narrow. For real. There's so many people on a film shoot, it's unbelievable, who actually don't really care about the movie you're making. I think that's true. It's a bit pessimistic,
totally
but I think
it's
that's
not
really
pessimistic
true.
at all. It is true. I mean,
and you got to deal with that. And you got to be okay with that.
Like even in the industry, there are people like that who are union, who ultimately are there for themselves. So, but the thing is, first off, I do think that the whole kind of familial element, it should be, it's more about just inherently having that atmosphere without it actually becoming something that's like a literal, we're gonna be a family type thing. I think that's what I was actually arguing against, which was trying to really make it into this familial environment can be poisonous in the end of the day. But also, like, to what you were saying about look, when we're working in the industry, the grips, the gaffers, they're union. You know, they're there to do their jobs, and trying to bring in too much of that. Okay, we're in this together. I mean, it's again, like you said, there's something noble about that, but at the same time, there is a workmanlike quality to movie making that cannot be underestimated. You know. Anyway, Toby, we've got to hear from you, and then we're gonna wrap this up. So
yeah, well, sure. I wanted to say on that, like, definitely Bernard. At first, when I was hearing the thing, I was like, oh, this guy's making jokes. Like, what's the issue there? But then when it's in the take, when it's like, oh, he's not doing his job anymore. He's interfering with the actor. He's overstepped the line. He's no longer doing his job well.
That's right.
He's interfering with the actor. And the actor took notice of it and had to tell you. And that right there, like, on the set of my film, I like to play music, but I pick the music. If someone asks me, hey, can you play this song? I need to first check, will this song work? Because atmosphere is important. Like, Farid,
absolutely.
We know this story of, never mind, I shouldn't bring it up. But, I'll just keep it ominous. Okay, listen.
Ominous.
But, like, in your...
Drama.
What the atmosphere of your set will reflect in the film itself. The actor's performance will reflect it. Let's say, hypothetically, there's two actors and they're supposed to play brother and sister, all right? They're both in their 20s. And let's say both these actors fuck, even though they're supposed to play brother and sister. The next day,
like
when they're on set...
Not the
yes,
characters.
the actors. Geez, not actually related.
Yeah.
But
you want to tell us something, Toby? You want to
no.
Tell us something about how you write your movies? Something we should know, Toby?
No, but like that right there is going to impact the next day on set. People are going to be like,
Absolutely.
I don't buy that this is a brother and sister. No matter how good those actors are, because that's gonna mess up the performance. It just is. it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are, that performance is now screwed. And that's why, like, I'd like to play music that would fit with the atmosphere of what we're doing. One time I remember we had a night shoot, and someone had switched the music to much more energized, like, Kanye West stuff, and that's great, that's awesome, but does not fit with the atmosphere, and the actors did not need that in their head right then.
Toby, I have a question for you, man, because look, some
Yeah.
things are out of control. You know, some of these things, like if your two leads decide to sleep together, it's not something we can really. Like, it's something that they decide to do themselves, and you can't really, as a director, be like, okay, guys, you can't.
You cannot have a list of, here are the people you can sleep with, here are the people you can't, don't sleep with the people you can't, here's that, you know, you can't do that. No.
Yeah,
that's,
The only person,
that's
the only person allowed to flirt on a shoot is a grip. That's law.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, sound guys. No.
Oh
not working.
No, that's more like rap party stuff, you know. So
Yeah.
where was I? That's a whole other tangent. But look, that can happen. You know what I mean? That
happens. Yeah.
Of course, and I don't know if I'm fully 100% with you, Toby, that screws a performance, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. It depends on the maturity of the two people.
I'm gonna say in this hypothetical, it did screw up the performance, and we could tell. All right, and here's the thing: you can't control that, but you can prevent things like that happening, and that all comes at the beginning of the shoot. I'm gonna tell you.
Is this based on a true story? Like,
yes. Everything I'm saying right now is from true story and experience. None of this is theoretical. This is from what I've observed.
So you're saying that
Yeah.
So you're saying the fact that those two actors got with each other, it hurt the performance for sure.
Yes. Okay. It's
Okay.
no longer hypothetical. It just happened, and I'm like, fuck that. Yes, I can totally tell. You need to have a solid first AD, a first AD who has ride or died for this film. You can have people who maybe don't care if the film works beat, but you need this first AD to care so much about you. And I was lucky enough to have this fantastic first AD. Her name is Mona. Geez, I almost mispronounced her name. How terrible would that be? Mona Rathsman, and she's just fantastic. She was a fantastic person to work with. She pushed everyone so hard and was kind and respectful and consistent on time, and I made her life a living hell, and I'm sorry, Mona. But she was a fantastic first AD who was ride or die, and the second thing you need to have, and this comes back to your first AD, you need to establish that you are the head and people look to you. And if they don't look to you, it's only because they're looking to someone else that you've put in that position. It's so important, and I know some directors don't. Because but you have given them that power. You have given that power. They've never taken the power for themselves, or someone else has become. You said, all right, and now I hand things off to my first AD. If you need anything, ask them. And you establish that I'm not only your head, I am the person. You do not come to me with menial tasks. You go to your own heads. And this also comes from having a really well-selected crew and stuff. But I know some directors don't like this, but I like to have a little moment where I just speak to the crew and I talk about what we're making, what the point is. I set the atmosphere, and I can't stop them from doing something bad in the future. But on that set right there, everyone is on the same page. Everyone knows what we're making. Everyone knows what we're doing, the point of it. Everyone is on the same page. And that is important, because you can't have someone then being like, oh, we're in a bar, we should drink on set. No. You establish the rules. You establish the things with phones. You establish this is the work area. And what also helps is to have an area where people can relax, have a crafts area, have an area where they can blow off some steam. Because otherwise that blowing off steam is going to flow into the work space if they're working for way too long. It's just inevitable.
Yeah, well, man, that's part of that's part of managerial too. Like along with the green room, just having a little space for crew to kind of go back. Like usually where Crafty is, that's usually where you can have a little setup. Yeah, that's a great thing that you touched upon for sure.
No, yeah, well, it's like those things. I've experienced a bad set. I've experienced a bad set before, and I've experienced good sets, and I'm happy to say the last film I did was one of the best sets I've been on, and I'm not saying that because I've directed bad sets. Yeah. And honestly, that came from a really good crew. I I know not everyone is always there to see the film succeed, but I genuinely believe, like, especially during the night shoot. The night shoot, people were, if people during the day were there to kind of pass through because they were friends, the night shoot was when real character was shown, and like you were ride or die if you were on that night shoot, and I'll always remember you and love you in my heart forever.
That's lovely. It's lovely. Yeah, I just want to preface what we're all saying. Despite what we're all saying, I just let it also be clear that fundamentally having a great shoot does not equate to a great movie, but it will help inevitably. It will inevitably still help. It can still obviously help to have a great shoot experience, because then it only maybe it seeps into the movie. You know, it can very much happen, and from what's on, the passion is very much alive. But you know, that always varies. But anyway, that was a fantastic and beautiful tangent, guys. I think we really made up for there's not enough movie making talk in this at the end. That really got.
I'd actually really like to touch back on something Bernard said earlier, because Bernard, you said your definition of what makes a good movie is, and I'd like, if it's okay with you, Farid, I'd like to end on this note, because you said the definition of a good movie is when you believe it, when you, not just you think
integrity.
It's good, you have that integrity to it. That kind of comes back to our original talk about director's cuts. And, like, do you still hold on to that fact that it's a good movie if you have that integrity, even if that film financially fails, even if people don't see it, even if it gets a runs, if you have that integrity, if you love the film, you see it as a good film?
Yeah, I think yes. In spite of financial troubles, absolutely. I think financials have very little to do with the quality of a film, actually.
Okay.
But, however, it's only true if, integrity doesn't mean that, like, I'm so convinced I'm right, then therefore I must be right. Like, you have to level with yourself.
Yeah.
It's true if, like, if you're telling everybody that your movie is a masterpiece or is a game changer, when it's like a student film, you don't know your place, and you don't know like what level you're on.
Yeah.
If your movie is actually just, maybe it is, but like if you make something great, or like, I think you make great movies when you know just how great they are.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my Devil movie is fine. You know what I mean? I like it. It makes me laugh, but it's not a fucking like blockbuster of a movie. It's not fantastic. You know what I mean? If I do make something fantastic, I'll be happy with myself. But like I'll know. But you have to know like what you're worth. Honestly, like good or bad, like you have to know what you're worth as a director, as even if you're not a director, like what you're worth as an AD, what you're worth at your job and everything. You have to know what the movies you make and you work on are worth, and as long as you know that and you're honest with yourself and other people about that, then I don't think you can go wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, stick to your guns, man. I mean, like, your movie gets a rotten thing. So what? I mean, if you liked the movie when you made it and when you finished it, and you looked upon it as a work that you're proud of, if a bunch of critics come and rotten it, I mean, give it a bad review. Look, I understand if that kind of not necessarily dissuades you, but if it kind of disheartens you about how you view your film, understandable. But in my belief, I mean, I think there's some integrity in still being like, look, it's still my baby, you know what I mean? And I do think that it's about that honesty thing you said, Bernard. We're ultimately still that. It's like, I'm honest with myself. I like this film. You may not like it. It may have a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. It might have like I don't know, Batman v Superman level reviews, but I still think it's great. So
one of my favorite movies, I think, of all the movies I've seen, is a movie called Sex Drive, which is ridiculously lambasted. Like, critics hate it, but the director's cut is so fucking funny. And it's even, like, artistic in some ways. Like, in the director's cut, like, I've never seen this in another movie before, and when I saw it, it blew my mind, and I thought something more film should do. They put the bloopers of the movie in the movie. Like, they're right in the middle. You're following a scene, and then suddenly everybody breaks down in laughter. And they just cut back to what the movie should be. And it's so obviously, like, bullshit, but it's so it makes for such a funny
the one
experience.
That's from 2008, directed by Sean Anders?
Maybe. Okay. Yeah, probably.
All right, I'm adding it to my list right now.
It's a guy in it's a guy in a donut.
Oh, okay, yeah,
suit.
he's got a.
That's the
It's a
poster.
It's a Mexican donut because he's got the hat and the
Yeah,
mustache.
exactly.
I can already tell.
Well, for my money, and again, this is also integrity. Like, obviously, yeah, it's not like a classic, it's not like a masterpiece, but I think that movie is a riot. And if I was to make something similar, I think whoever made that movie, Sean Anders, if you say so,
Sean Anders.
I know for a fact because they have like this sort of director's commentary at the very beginning, but they you can tell that they have that sort of integrity. They know what their movie is, but they also know that they fucking love it,
And that's beautiful, really.
And that's why Marvel movies suck, because they're so way up their own ass. Like, seriously. Like, they're all like, we are changing the film landscape. Like, shut up.
No, you're not.
Like, seriously? like a dance battle at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy? Are you fucking kidding me?
Hey.
No, I'm just pulling in. I'm caricaturing what I actually feel, but I'm also pulling your leg.
Hey, I getcha. Volume 2 is much better than Volume 1 in my opinion, but hey.
I agree with that. Look, gentlemen, we could talk all day, honestly. This
We
has
could.
been so fun, man.
It was.
Look, Bernard, man, I want to thank you for being on our show and for
Hey, no worries. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
This was a lot of fun, and really the insight you gave us, you taught us a few things too, no doubt, man, with this stuff.
No worries. That's because I'm incredibly drunk right now.
Fantastic.
I'm
Hey,
just
That's
kidding.
what I'm doing right after this. What?
Yeah.
We're like on the same page, guys. What?
Oh my god.
Let's be roommates. No, like, okay. Thanks, Bernard, for coming on the show. And
worries. My pleasure.
anybody watching this, if you've got any requests for any movies you want us to talk about, like, force us into it. We will do it.
Bully
Like,
us in the comments. Bully us in the comments down below.
Yeah, we only cry for 20 minutes and then we move on and listen. So
We also got an Instagram page where Fareed mostly handles that, but like bully him. Like tell him, does the Christopher Nolan drawing look like a dick or not? We want to hear your opinions on this. Write down in the comments
seriously.
what you want to see in future episodes.
Yeah, I'm just a shell of confidence looking to be destroyed. So
More Christopher Nolan dick? Less Christopher Nolan dick? Just the drawing of the dick? Who's to say?
We're never talking about this ever again. So, thank you everyone for being with us, and take care and have a great have a good one.
Yep. All right.
Bye.